I know. Organ meats, right? They look, feel, maybe smell a little bit different. But cooking organ meats doesn't have to be intimidating, and it can actually be some of the most delicious parts of the deer that you harvest. And that's what this video is all about. Turning something that looks intimidating, like a deer heart, into something absolutely outstanding. And once you watch this video, you too will be able to make something like this. Ready? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Jonathan. I'm a wildlife ecology professor showing you how to build the wild kitchen. All right, so organ meats are really important because they are by far the most nutrient dense part of any animal that you're going to consume. But it can be a little bit difficult to make the transition from eating only muscle meat to including more of the organs of an animal in your diet. But there's one organ in particular that is very close to what most of us are consuming off of our deer, and that's the heart. And in fact, the heart is in fact a muscle, which makes it really the perfect gateway cut of meat to start eating more organs. So in this episode, I'm going to walk you through preparing a fresh deer heart like you would any cut of steak and turning it into something absolutely delicious. Are you ready to make venison chimichurri? Let's go. One of the most discarded organ meats in the United States from hunters is the heart. It is not just like a muscle, it is a muscle. So it's muscle meat. It's a slightly different type of muscle in the body than your muscles that control your limbs. But cardiac muscle, just like skeletal muscle, is striated, and the function is about the same, right? Is to contract. But there's a lot of misinformation about what the heart structure actually is, and you'll see a lot of videos with people saying like this portion, this top of the heart is, where all the vessels and connective tissue is. So what I want to do is actually go over the anatomy of a heart, because there's no reason why you should not understand what you're eating. Hey folks, I just wanted to take a break and let you know that one of the best ways to get the most out of the content on this channel is to subscribe to my newsletter. Every Sunday, I give you more depth and insight into the topics I cover on Out There JCH, including thoughts and perspectives that I don't really share on this platform. The newsletter is free to sign up, and as an incentive to becoming a subscriber, I'm offering a free wild food resource guide that will help make you a more capable harvester and home cook. Just click the link in the description to sign up. Okay, let's get back to the episode. So that's what this video is all about. That's what this section of this video is all about. I'm going to go over the anatomy of the heart and make it make sense, because a deer's heart, like a lot of other mammals, is very similar to a human heart, because humans are mammals as well. So this is the way the heart would look sitting inside the deer, and if you were to lay the deer on its back, its heart would be facing up and looking at you just like this. And so most of what you see in the heart, this muscle section here, are the two ventricles, the right ventricle and the left ventricle of the heart. Okay, now these are the largest portions of the heart because they're responsible for pumping blood from the heart to different parts of the body. The right ventricle is responsible for pumping blood from the heart to the lungs, and the left ventricle, which is the largest muscle section of the heart, is responsible for pumping blood from the heart to the entire body. Okay, and that's why you can feel your heartbeat stronger on your left side. In human beings, your heart kind of sits a little bit slanted like this. And so the pumping that you feel and that you hear, the big contraction that you have on the left, in the left ventricle, is what you feel in your body. Okay, there's a longer distance for blood to travel. So this section of the heart is actually going to have the thickest muscle here. Okay, so the two ventricles are the parts of the heart that pump blood from the heart to the rest of the body. Now, the parts of the heart that receive blood from the body and the lungs sit on top of the heart. And so a lot of people in videos have said that like all of this is vessels. My friend who gave me this heart cut away most of this atria, okay? But the atria are responsible for receiving blood from the lungs in the right atria and from the body in the right atria, And from the lungs in the left atria, blood comes in from different parts of the body, and then when these atria contract, they pump blood to the ventricles. Okay, so these little dog ear type things that sit on top of the heart aren't actually vessels. They are muscle sections of the heart that pump blood to the ventricles in the body. Okay, this large vessel up here, this actually is a vessel. This is the aorta. This is the main blood vessel that sends blood from the heart to the rest of the body. Okay, this is definitely the thickest and most elastic vessel in the body because it's under such high pressure. You get a puncture in your aorta as a human being, you better be near a hospital with some of the best surgeons in the world, because a puncture here is, you're going to lose blood really fast because it's under high pressure. So this is the aorta. The last part on the external structure that I want to talk about is this sort of dividing section here. This is the coronary artery and vein. This is the main blood vessel of the heart. So a lot of times you'll hear people, they have a coronary, they have a blockage in this main vessel to the heart. And that's very serious because this is the vessel that supplies blood to the rest of this muscle, right? So if you have a blockage here, the heart doesn't function. And so this is the coronary artery and vein. They run kind of parallel to each other right here. Okay? So right ventricle, left atria receives blood from the lungs and pumps it into the left ventricle. The right atria receives blood from the rest of the body and pumps it into the right ventricle. And then we have the aorta up top right here. Okay, so those are the parts of the heart. It's important to know that if you're going to eat this muscle, and it's exactly how your heart looks. Now, this is an older doe. Its heart is pretty big. My hands are fairly large, and you can see how big this heart is. So it's important not to throw this part of the animal away or just leave it in the field, because it's really delicious. So we're going to clean this thing up. I'm going to cut it open and show you some of the internal structures of the heart so that we can learn a little bit more about what this organ actually does and what it functions like. One more little bit of anatomy on the external structure of the heart. If we flip the heart over, the back side of the heart, we can see the openings where the atria are. And these sort of like channels in here are where the vena cava, the main vein of the body, comes in and puts blood into the right atria. Okay, so this kind of like trough looking thing, there is a large vessel that would come off of here and go down to the rest of the body, and then another branch that branches up into the head. And so when blood is coming back to the heart, it flows through those two main veins into the right atria and then down into the right ventricle. Okay, and then on the back side here, on this left side of the heart, this is where the pulmonary vein would be, and that brings blood, oxygenated blood from the lungs back into the heart, into the left atria, pumped down into the left ventricle, and then back out through the aorta to the rest of the body. Okay, so that's the back side of the heart. All right, so I'm going to attempt to cut this heart sort of as in half as I can. Just get this butcher knife here, and that's perfect. So a little bit of things to remember about when you're preparing this muscle to eat. I like this cross section, one, just from anatomy purposes. We can show you the different sections here, but you want to make sure that you clean out as much of these blood clots as possible, because this isn't going to be really good eats. But I like this cross section a lot because you really get to see more of the structure of the heart, and you get to see the differences in here. You see, I didn't really have like a clean cut. I've got these kind of waves there, but that's fine. Another thing that I've noticed that people have said in these videos that's not quite correct is that these structures here, they call like veins. And I think I watched one video where somebody called it like a tendon. Okay, these are what's called the chordae tendineae. And these are fibrous structures that pull on the valves of the heart, right? So when the muscle contracts, it pulls on these cords and opens the valves of the heart. And so when you're hearing the thump thump of a heartbeat, that's actually the sound of the valves closing, and they open to allow blood to flow. And you have valves in your heart because you want unidirectional flow in your heart. You don't want blood that has oxygen in it flowing backwards in the heart, and you also don't want blood that needs oxygen flowing in the wrong direction. So these valves are really important. And if you ever heard somebody who, or if you might have a heart murmur, the murmur is the incomplete closing of those valves. And so they're supposed to shut nice and tight, but sometimes they don't shut all the way. There could be a mistiming with the electrical signals in your heart so that these valves don't close. The valves themselves could be kind of faulty and not come together. So a heart murmur is actually the sound of the blood sort of backflowing in the heart. Right. So these cords are the chordae tendineae, and you can actually see here this cord attached to this valve, right? So when the heart muscle contracts, these cords pull, right, and pull this valve here. What I have my fingers on right here is the actual valve, one of the valves of the heart. You can see that these are really important and they're strong structures. So a really cool thing in terms of cooking, you want to cut these parts out of the heart because that's not going to be good eats. These are really tough structures and they're not going to be that tasty. The other thing I want to point out is the size of the difference in the size of the ventricles. Now, what we're looking at mostly here is left ventricle. You see how thick the muscle is here? Because this part of the heart needs to contract really strongly in order to pump blood throughout the rest of the body. You can see the difference in the size of the wall here of the right ventricle. So this chamber right here is right ventricle, right? Over here, right ventricle. All of this is left ventricle. And again, that makes sense, right? The left ventricle has to contract strong enough to send blood through the entire body. The right ventricle only has to pump blood from the heart next door to the lungs. And so it's not as large a chamber, right? So if I were to make a cut here, I would essentially be cutting away the right ventricle from the left ventricle here, right? You can also see the inside of the aorta right here, okay? So as blood leaves the left ventricle, it goes up and through the aorta, this thick vessel right here, and into the rest of the body, okay? So this is the anatomy of the heart. I think it's important and kind of neat to know what, a mammalian heart looks like. Like I said, the human heart looks exactly the same, maybe a little bit smaller. So it's really cool. But in terms of anatomy, that's kind of the lesson. Most of this is what I'm going to be cutting away on this heart because there's a lot of connective tissue. It's not going to be really that good to eat. So when you're eating heart, most of what you're eating are the two ventricles. And of the two ventricles, most of what you're going to eat is the left ventricle. That's going to be the sort of like biggest portion there. But I wanted to just spend some time to talk about the anatomy of the heart because when I watch videos on deer heart and cooking it and people try to explain the anatomy, they're wrong on a lot of stuff, which is fine, right? It just so happens that I'm a biology professor and I've taught anatomy and I don't remember all of these parts, right? I said the valves I don't have quite clear, but that's the basic structure and it's really neat. So yeah, let's get cooking. So to start things off, I like to trim out these chordae tendineae because it doesn't matter really how long you cook the heart, that part of the heart is never going to be tasty. And then I like to move on to just really cut off the top of the heart that has some of the atria in them and then trimming off the fat on the outside of the heart because that fat is not all that good. Then just moving on to kind of trimming out more of the inside of that part of the heart, the ventricles there. It doesn't really matter to trim those things out, just aesthetically though, I think it looks a little bit nicer, but you can keep it in there if you want. All right, now we're seasoning it up, and I like to keep things simple here, just salt and pepper, nothing fancy, nothing too intricate. You're going to want to put oil on your heart because the muscle is very lean, especially if you're grilling. You don't want this to get stuck to your grill, so oil it up liberally so that it doesn't stick. Y'all already know, charcoal, baby. There's no other way to grill. One of the biggest adjustments that a lot of people have when they first start to cook wild game is how lean the cuts of meat are. And heart is no exception. if you overcook this cut of meat, it is going to be tougher than a car tire. So keep an eye on it and err on the side of undercooking it, because you can eat heart rare or medium rare. What makes this meal really shine is the chimichurri. Now, I'm adapting this recipe to include cilantro and not just parsley. Also going to throw in a bunch of garlic, some onions, and a whole lot of assorted hot peppers. Some salt, some olive oil, and some apple cider vinegar. I'm also going to add a little bit of sour with lime juice, which really kind of wakens up this entire condiment. And I kind of want to let that sit for a little bit, give it a little taste, but it's outstanding. Okay, outside it's a little bit quieter to record, but here it is. Here is the deer heart. It's cooked medium rare, chimichurri-ish sauce on it. Not a true chimichurri sauce, but looks delicious. So here we go. mm. Mm. That is so good. I mean, everything you want. Nice chewy meat texture. No gaminess whatsoever. There's nothing gamey about this heart at all. It's tender, and that's because you want to cut across the striations in the muscle so that it's not super chewy, but it is a heart muscle. It's been working a lot, all this deer's life. So it's not gonna be like veal or anything like that. But so good, and that chimichurri-ish sauce is just so lovely. The smoothness of the olive oil, the bite of the apple cider vinegar, and the lime juice and all the herbs is just perfect. This is how you want to do your heart. One of my favorite things to eat growing up was to go to the mall with my mom and go to a place, the name I can't remember right now, but it was a Mexican-American place that made taco salads. And I was so enamored with this because you could eat the shell that the salad sat in. And so I really wanted to recreate that with this special meal. And, rice, beans, some kind of meat, lettuce, and just make it look really special and delicious. And takes me back to my days of, being younger and enjoying it. Throwing on some grilled vegetables here that just kind of adds that smoky flavor. And of course the chimichurri-ish sauce. And what you get is just something that is really outstanding. Couldn't have turned out better. Okay, so leftover medium rare steak doesn't really keep that well, except if you're going to turn it into steak and eggs the next day. So if you're not going to eat all of your heart at once, which you absolutely could, you can put some aside and add some mushrooms and onions and cook up some scrambled eggs and have a steak and eggs the next day. And of course, I'm going to use that chimichurri-ish sauce to finish it off. And again, another outstanding meal. And when I say outstanding, I really do mean one of the best breakfasts I've ever had. By far the best steak and eggs I've ever had. It was just absolutely fantastic. And the fact that it's deer heart is just amazing. Pretty straightforward, right? With a little anatomy lesson mixed in. Like I said, the heart is the perfect organ meat to start with. So if you're feeling a little bit intimidated, use this recipe, outtherejch.com, to begin to incorporate more organ meats in your diet. If you're looking for more instruction on how to break down an entire white-tailed deer, check out this video. All right, that's all I have for now, and I'll see you next time on